hi, a very happy good evening. So this is Krishna Ma'am. We're talking about the story of life on Earth, and that's biology. So thank you so much for joining my new beginning series. So today we are in lecture 2 of photosynthesis in higher plants, and I hope you're enjoying the part of plant physiology. So plant physiology is one unit where all students put a step back and say, ma'am, this is not a cup of cake. But yeah, without that cup of cake, you won't get a food in your hand. So that is why you have to read out photosynthesis and the other chapters in plant physiology. So I'll try to make it as interesting as possible and as simple as possible. More than interesting, you guys want it simplified, so I'll make sure I'll simplify it as much as I can. Yes, Naga Puja, hello, a very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining my lecture. So please do like, share and subscribe. Well, so far we were talking about the basic experiments, the experiments that I was telling you. So then we went on to talk about the PS1 and probably we just started off with the experiments, right? So today we'll be talking about PS1 and PS2. So what is a light reaction, to be precise? So what exactly happens in a light reaction? Alright, so before we go, I'll give you a quick recap of all the scientists as well, so that you remember what we spoke in the previous lecture. So probably the lecture 3 will continue on Monday. So today it's Friday, so we are gearing up for the weekend. So I hope you guys have a very good weekend, well in advance. Okay, so let's go forward and see what I have in store for you today. So photosynthesis in higher plants, lecture 2. The topics that we shall discuss today. So what do we know? So we read about some early experiments, and we know photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast. So probably I will discuss or quickly recap the structure of the chloroplast for you so that you remember it and it's easy for you now. So how many pigments are actually involved in photosynthesis? So all we know is only chlorophyll. So apart from that, we have 3 more. So you have chlorophyll A, you have chlorophyll B, so xanthophylls and carotenoids. So actually 4 pigments that is involved in photosynthesis. So today we'll be actually elaborating on what is the light reactions, what are the processes that happens in a light reaction, and if time permits, we'll talk about the electron transport, that is the Z scheme, or you can call it as a non-cyclic photophosphorylation. And according or associated with it, so along with it, you have the splitting of water molecules that happens. Yeah, so then probably I'll differentiate between cyclic and non-cyclic phosphorylation. Yeah, that itself is too much for us today, so I don't know how much slides I have. So chemiosmotic hypothesis is for the next week, so that is Monday. Alright, so let's move forward. So giving you a quick recap of what I spoke. So we know photosynthesis is something very basic, and well, photosynthesis none of us can sustain, either you, me, or a bacteria, or for example any animal, right? So photosynthesis is a basic because plants are the autotroph, and plants to do photosynthesis, they depend on sunlight. Thus solar energy being the basis of all life is a very important topic. So now how do they do it? So what do we know so much about photosynthesis? So first of all, we know photosynthesis needs sunlight and photosynthesis needs carbon dioxide, right? So giving you a quick recap of what we already know. So photosynthesis requires sunlight, as well as it requires carbon dioxide, right? So these are some of the basic experiments. So you could call photosynthesis as a physiochemical process. Right? Try to bring chemistry and physics one-shot series. Pranav D. Prasad, yes, chemistry is coming. So very soon we'll start with chemistry. And a week after chemistry starts, we'll be starting with your physics, don't worry. Yes, so yes, we have made arrangements to start or initiate physics and chemistry for you as well, okay? Yeah, so apart from this, we spoke about a series of experiments. So I told you to remember the name of the scientist, the experiment they performed, and what is the conclusion that they gave as very important. So we saw a set of 4 experiments to be very exact. So the first name of the scientist is called as your Priestley. So Joseph Priestley. So Joseph Priestley actually discovered oxygen for us. So he took a closed jar and he placed a candle and a rat, and he found out that the mice or the rat, the candle did not continue to burn and they died. So why so? Because he found that the breathing animal and the burning candle, they destroy the air. And he also found that when he placed a plant inside the closed jar, that the animal and the candle continue to live and burn respectively. Right? So he said that plants restore the damage that is done by the living organisms, that is animals and the burning candle. Next came another scientist. So he is called as Jan Eigenhaus. So he did two set of experiments. For first he said for plants to restore the damage done by the animal and the candle, it needs sunlight, right? So that is the first conclusion Jan Eichenhaus gave. The second conclusion that Jan Eichenhaus gave was that oxygen is produced by the green parts of the plants. So these are the two conclusions that Jan Eichenhaus gave. The third one was given by Julius von Sachs, who also discovered hydroponics. So he gave evidence that yes, glucose is produced when the plants grow. Another thing he said, the glucose is stored as starch and it is produced within the chlorophyll, which is placed inside the chloroplast of the leaf. So that was his conclusion. So coming to the fourth one, that was by T.W. Engelmann. So he actually split the prism. So when he split the prism of colors, he got spectral components, and into the spectral components he placed a group of green algae Cladophora, and he also introduced a suspension of aerobic bacteria. So your green algae will align along the wavelength where photosynthesis can happen, and your bacteria will align where oxygen is produced. So to be very clear, oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis. So if I find out where the bacteria is, I can know the photosynthesis wavelength. So that's the first absorption spectra of photosynthesis was presented. So that is about the T.W. Engelmann. The last of the scientists was your Cornelius von Neil. So he gave us a milestone contribution. He said that the oxygen that comes as a byproduct of photosynthesis comes from water and not from carbon dioxide. So that was his conclusion, right? So the ultimate equation of photosynthesis is, so I will just write simply, I am not writing the stoichiometric equation, I am just writing a non-stoichiometric equation. So to be precise, it is carbon dioxide plus water gives you C6 H12O6 plus water molecules, right? So the water molecule is responsible for the production of oxygen here. So this is the complete equation of photosynthesis. So where does photosynthesis occur? So I guess this is one of the easiest questions. So your photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. So chloroplast is a membrane bound organ, so organelle. So you can say it is a double membrane bound organelle. So to give you a quick recap of the structure of the chloroplast. So it is a double membrane bound structure, right? So I call this as the outer membrane, this as the inner membrane, and the space is called as the intermembrane space. The space inside the cytoplasm of the chloroplast is called as stroma. So here you have flat dish-shaped structures like this. So each of the flat dish-shaped structure is called as a thylakoid. So each one is called as a thylakoid, the flat dish-shaped structure. The center portion of the thylakoid is called as lumen. Fine. So this stack of thylakoid, singular is called, one stack is called as granum. So granum is singular. So if you have many stacks arranged, it is called as grana. So grana is plural. Alright. So the grana are connected together by what is called as stromal lamellae. Fine. So this is the structure of your chloroplast. I hope you're able to recollect. So shall I move forward? Yes. So is the recap and the structure of chloroplast clear to all of you? Yes. Okay. So where does photosynthesis occur? In the leaf and in chloroplast, but it does take place in the non-green part of the plant as well, so not necessarily only in the green part of the plant. So what is the plant is not at all green, right? So example, the mesophil cells in leaves have a number of chloroplasts. So the chloroplast actually gets aligned along the wall so that they can actually take up maximum sunlight that is falling on them. So if you look into the structure, you can see these green ball-like structures or solid square-like structures. So they are the chloroplasts. If you see, they are aligned towards the walls and not towards the center, so that they can trap maximum amount of light. right? So yeah, structure of chloroplast, this is what I recreated there in the first slide. So I hope now you're able to understand or recollect the structure of chloroplast vividly. Yes, so chloroplast has a clear division of labor. So you have two reactions happening as a part of photosynthesis. One is light reaction, the other one is the dark reaction. So as the name suggests, light reaction happens in the presence of light. And then dark reactions occurs in dark? No, but in the absence of light. Okay, so as simple as that. So probably I can say this room is not well lit. It does not mean the room is dark. It has some amount of sunlight entering, right? So something on that context. So there are two reactions that is occurring inside the chloroplast. Okay. But they not do about, I think. Okay, hello W. Yes, a very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining my session. So please do like, share and subscribe. So don't worry. So even I'm hopeful like you. So I've been standing here for almost 1.5 years right now. So yeah, I also do my efforts to bring them, but unlikely. So when you need something, the entire universe should conspire to happen. So that does not happen here. So probably even I'm hopeful like you to bring in a physics and chemistry. Not to bring them is a disadvantage to me as well. So even I pray as one among you to bring physics and chemistry to this channel. So let's see how it works out. All right. Yeah. So chloroplast, there's a clear division of labors as I was telling you. So there are two reactions happening. One is light reaction and one is dark reaction. So the membrane system, that is the thylakoid membrane, is responsible for trapping light, and hence it is responsible for the light reaction that happens as a part of your photosynthesis. Okay, so the membrane system, so here I am talking about the thylakoid membrane. It is responsible for trapping light energy plus the synthesis of ATP and NADPH. So the light reaction happens in the thylakoid membrane and it also produces ATP and NADPH. That is the first part, right? Now the stroma, the cytoplasmic space inside the chloroplast, that is the stroma, is responsible for producing sugars based on the products from the light reaction. So it is indirectly dependent on light reaction. Thus, to give a contrary name, it is given as the dark reaction. Alright, yes. So later the glucose that is produced is converted or stored as starch. So the former is driven by light, that is the membrane, thylakoid membrane. The production of ATP and NADPH happens in the presence of light, so it is given the name light reaction. So the second reaction, the later one, does not actually happen in dark, but neither it happens in light, and it is actually dependent on the products of the light reaction. Alright, so there are two types of reaction, light reaction and dark reaction, as a part of photosynthesis. Alright. So as a part of photosynthesis, so you have light reaction and you have dark reaction, right? So light reaction happens in the thylakoid membrane. So dark reaction happens in the stroma. Okay, so the thylakoid membrane, which helps or which is responsible for trapping the light energy, it actually produces ATP plus your NADPH. Okay, and your stroma is responsible for synthesizing sugars. So basically the sugar is glucose and it is stored in the form of starch, right? And this is indirectly dependent on the products of light reaction. The products of light reaction also include your oxygen. So oxygen is also a product of your light reaction. Alright, so please remember this much. So let's move forward and talk about how many types of pigments are involved in photosynthesis. So that is a very important topic. So how do you find the type of pigments, or how many types of pigments are present in photosynthesis? Is you do a very simple experiment that is called as thin paper chromatography. So that's a very small experiment in lab. Probably you can ask your chemistry teacher to explain much because it has a bit of chemistry in it. So when we did this thin layer chromatography, so it gave us that the process or the types of pigments that is involved in photosynthesis to be 4 pigments. Namely, it is chlorophyll A. So it is along the bright blue green wavelength. and then you have the chlorophyll B, so it is along the yellow-green wavelength, and then you have xanthophylls, which is yellow in color, and then you have carotenoids, this is yellow to yellow-orange in color. Alright, so these pigments are substances which have the ability to absorb light at a specific wavelength, right? So that is why they are called as pigments. So their maximum absorption happens with chlorophyll A in the bright blue-green region. So it shows the higher rate of photosynthesis, and thus that is the chief photosynthetic pigment. So though there are so many people, there's only one leader, right? So always the leader is one and members are many. So similarly, the maximum absorption rate is shown by chlorophyll A, okay? Yes. So this is the chief pigment associated. So you call that as your chief pigment, alright? Fine. So, okay, so once again, this is repeated. Yes. So here you can see, so first they have did the action spectra of the first three types of photosynthetic pigments, that is chlorophyll A, carotenoids and chlorophyll B. So when they did the three types of pigments, when they did the action spectra of these three types, and when they did the action spectra of the photosynthesis, they tried to overlap these two graphs. When they overlap, they found out that the absorption spectra of photosynthesis is somewhat very close to your chlorophyll A. So thus your chlorophyll A, they have found out that that is the chief pigment that is associated with your photosynthesis. Alright, yes, fine. So let's move forward. Yes, W, what is your problem? If you're not interested in what I'm teaching, you don't have to disturb us. You can either watch or you don't watch, but please don't disturb who's watching. Yes. Right, so most of the photosynthesis takes place in the blue-red region, so probably along the chlorophyll A. Alright, so some other take place at the wavelength of the visible spectrum. So chlorophyll A is a major pigment that is important in trapping light. Alright, so other thylakoid pigments we have just seen, chlorophyll B, xanthophylls and carotenoids are called as the accessory pigments. So you have the chief pigment, that is chlorophyll A, and you have the accessory pigments, that is chlorophyll B, xanthophylls, carotenoids. Alright, fine. So they absorb light and transfer energy to the chlorophyll A. So probably if you are in a team, so you actually work in a team and coordinate to prove your best, right? So similarly, the accessory pigments help to ensure that the chief pigment does its work properly and they get the maximum input of trapping the light energy. So accessory pigments enable wider range of wavelength of the incoming light, and it is utilized for photosynthesis. Okay, so it actually protects the chlorophyll A from photooxidation. Okay, xanthophylls or carotenoids का काम क्या है? So xanthophylls and carotenoids are pigments. They are accessory pigments. So the accessory pigments, so in a group you have many people, right? So you have one leader and you have many people. So the leader will also work, the team members also work. So similarly, chlorophyll A is the chief pigment. Xanthophylls and carotenoids are accessory pigments, but they still help in trapping the light energy. And they also prevent the chief pigment chlorophyll A from getting photo-oxidized. Yes, ma'am, a very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining my lecture today. So please do like, share and subscribe. Right? So these accessory pigments, they actually trap a wider wavelength of the incoming light that can be used for the process of light reaction. They also protect the chlorophyll A from photo-oxidation. Alright, so this is the next function. So what exactly is light reaction? So what happens in a light reaction? So first thing, light reaction is the photochemical phase of the entire process. So it absorbs light, that is the first thing that it does. So who observes light? Which part? So the chlorophyll absorbs light, okay, I agree. But here you have a complex system. So then splitting of water happens, the oxygen releases, then your energy components are released, right? So let's see what happens. So who observes the energy? So when I say everything is happening, so we are going to talk about the light reaction. So we know light reaction is happening inside the thylakoid. So inside the thylakoid it is happening. So that is in the lumen. So the pigments are present within an organized complex that is called as the light harvesting complex. So LHC stands for the light harvesting complex. Okay. So this light harvesting complex has two parts. One is the reaction center. The other is the antennae pigment or the antennae. So the reaction center has the chief chlorophyll pigment, chlorophyll A, and the antennae has your accessory pigments. So 𝐿𝐻𝐶 has two parts. So the pigments, the four pigments that is involved in photosynthesis are organized within your light harvesting complex. There are two types or two components of your light harvesting complex. One is the reaction center where your chief pigment is present. The second is your antennae where your accessory pigments are present. Alright? Yes? Okay. Yes, coming. Fine. So now this 𝐿𝐻𝐶 is present in two forms. Okay? So the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 is where the light harvesting complex is present. So when I talk about light reaction, the first step is light absorption. So we know light is absorbed by the pigment, but the pigments are present inside 𝐿𝐻𝐶. So now the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 is actually present inside a photosystem complex. So the pigments are present inside the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 and the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 is actually present inside a photosystem complex. You have photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. 1 and 2 are named in the order in which they were discovered, not in the order in which they work. Okay. So you have two photosystems. So first light will fall on the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 of your PS2. So PS2 has a wavelength of around 680 nanometer. So the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 molecules in the pH2 actually traps the wavelength at the 680 nanometer. Alright. So when it traps the light, so it actually excites the electrons that is present here. So now the electrons get excited so much that they reach the excited state. So here you have the primary electron acceptor. So the primary electron acceptor in PS2 is your ubiquinone. Fine. So from here the electron moves inside the electron transport system. So when the electron moves inside the electron transport system, ATP is produced from the ADP. Now this electron further moves into plastocyanin and then into the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 complex of PS1. So PS1 has a wavelength of P700 nanometer. Okay. So actually light falls on the 𝐿𝐻𝐶 of PS1 and PS2 simultaneously. Okay. So now the electrons are excited. So here the primary electron acceptor is your iron sulfur complex. Now the electrons move downhill. When they do move downhill, there is a reduction of NADP into NADPH plus H plus, and here the enzyme is NADP reductase. So this causes the reduction. Okay, yes, fine. So since this looks like a Z like this, so a Z like this, so this is called as Z scheme. So this is also called as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Because the electrons is not cycling back to the same position, but it keeps moving forward. Alright, this is clear. But here you have to understand a small twist. So if light falls on the 𝐿𝐻𝐶, if all the electrons are excited, still light is falling, right? So I need to replenish or restore the stock of my electrons. So where will the stock of my electrons come from? So it comes from the splitting of water molecules. So water molecules are split into H plus, O2 and electrons. So these electrons replace the lost electrons here. Okay. So the oxygen which comes from water is a byproduct of photosynthesis, right? So splitting of water is strictly associated with PS2. Fine? Understood? So is this process clear? Is it tough? I don't think it's tough. It is pretty easy, right? So sit and read your NCERT. So solve 2-3 questions based. So solve 10 questions also based on this. You'll understand it much clearer. All right. So in the next class, we'll be talking about what is cyclic photophosphorylation and what is chemiosmotic hypothesis. So probably I will do this on Monday, and next Wednesday we'll be done with this chapter. Alright, then I will start biomolecules. So thank you so much for watching my lecture today. So I hope you enjoyed and understood the concept of light reaction and what happens in a 𝗪 scheme and what is splitting of water. So I hope you will like, share and subscribe. So thank you so much for being here once again. So I will meet you on Monday. So until then, have a great weekend, have a great time, and please do make some time for solving questions. That is equally important. So until then, this is me signing off. So take care and bye.